Paul Stamiska here with another episode of our KML Foundation Table Talk vlog. It's really exciting to be able to come to you each month with these, and I believe that each month we've had some great topics and some fantastic guests. I'm very honored to be able to bring back one of our special guests, Jim Holm from the Wells Foundation and Wells Investments. And today we're going to talk about donor-advised funds. Donor-advised funds. You maybe have heard the term, but I'd like to be able to explore a little bit more with our guest today. Today I welcome Jim Holm, again, from the Wells Foundation and Wells Investments. And Jim's going to be able to explain a little bit more about donor-advised funds. So welcome, Jim.
Thank you, Paul. Appreciate the opportunity.
So let's start. What is a donor-advised fund?
I've heard them referred to or described in different ways. One being kind of a charitable investment account. I know there are financial institutions that have established their own charitable component, and investors are encouraged to set up a charitable investment account, if you will. It is an outright gift. It's an irrevocable gift that a donor makes to a charity, and then they retain the right to make recommendations as to how that gift is used. Could be done immediately, or you could spread those recommendations out over a period of years.
So, if I understand correctly, the Wells Foundation would be a charity that you could give the money for a donor-advised fund.
Yes, in early 2000s, Wells Foundation set up its own donor-advised fund program.
Okay. Now, and again, for information, if someone came to us and said, we'd really like to start a donor-advised fund for Kettle Moraine Lutheran High School or the KML Foundation, we don't do that. We would direct them to you, and then you would handle that.
Yeah, correct. Our role is to support Kettle Moraine and any Wells ministry. Our role is to make it easy for donors to make gifts to any Wells ministry they choose.
Fantastic. And then, and again, if I understand correctly, you get that gift and then you invest that money.
Correct. We ask the donor where they would like it invested. We've got a couple of different options. One more for long term. It's called the Wells Balance Fund. It's 60% in equities, 40% in fixed income. The other would be in a money market account. So if the donor was planning on making distributions over a period of years, we would want to invest that more appropriately in the balance fund. If the donor is thinking, this is a gift I want to make in December, but next year, January, February, March, we want to distribute all of that to the ministries that are closest to us, then we would probably stay in that money market account.
Okay. So are you saying that there's no time limit on how long a donor-advised fund can be in existence?
No time limit is a long time. We ask that the donor-advised fund remain active. And by active, we mean donor is making gifts, donor is making grant recommendations. Obviously, if we haven't heard from a donor in a number of years, we don't want that money just to sit idle. So we ask when you set it up, if that were to happen, if the Lord calls you home, or if the situation changes where we're not hearing from you on your donor advised fund, you tell us where you want us to make that final distribution.
Okay. So I don't know that I've heard a lot about donor advised funds in the past, but I'm starting to hear about them more and more. Are they becoming more popular?
Yeah, they are. Over the last 5 or 6 years, there's been a lot of activity in the donor advised funds.
So Jim, what are the benefits of a donor advised fund?
One of the benefits that people are taking advantage of over the last 5 years or so is the ability to bunch your annual giving. In 2018, 2019, the standard deductions basically doubled. So for a married couple, $24,000 or $25,000 a year before you can take advantage of itemizing your charitable giving. But if you have a mortgage, if you're paying real estate taxes, if you're a generous donor who gives $10,000, $15,000, $20,000 a year, instead of making annual gifts or monthly gifts, you can bunch a series of 2 or 3 years into one gift, into your donor advised fund, and take advantage of itemizing your income tax deductions.
So then because the money's invested, you could even give more over time.
That's correct. That's correct. You make the gift. If you're looking at making distributions short term, we would want to stay with that conservative money market option. But yes, if it's a long-term plan, long-term program, we would want to invest it for long-term. Take advantage of that growth. That growth is tax-free, and then you can distribute to the charities that you select over a period of years.
So let's imagine, Jim, people have listened in and they said, boy, this is something I want to do. I really like this concept. How do they create a donor advised fund with the Wells Foundation?
It's an easy process, and I'd encourage first if they could reach out to you as a point of contact. But there's a simple application that we would fill out. We'd gather the information, who the donor is, their name, and their address, so we know where to send their quarterly statements. We would also want to hear from them, if the Lord were to call them home, what they would like to have happen with the assets in their donor advised fund, where they would like to make those distributions. We'd also want to know who the recommenders are. If you have a donor that sets it up, but maybe they want their children to be able to make recommendations from their donor advised fund, they would be able to do that. We would just need to know who.
So that leads me then to the next question. It's a donor advised fund. Can they pick any group or entity to receive the money from this donor advised fund?
By law, it's restricted to only 501c3 charities, and of course, Kettle, Wells, any Wells congregation would qualify as a 501c3 charity.
So if they said, I want to give to the Humane Society, would that work?
It would. Wells Foundation is set up really to benefit Wells Ministries. However, we recognize that there are other very worthwhile charities that a donor may want to support. And as long as the charity isn't in conflict with Wells theology, Planned Parenthood as an obvious example, yes, donors can make recommendations for any charity.
Okay. Now, when we talk about the donation to start the donor advised fund, does this have to be like a cash check, that kind of thing, or can it be other assets?
It could be most any asset. The most advantageous typically is appreciated securities. You could do cash, obviously, but if you make a gift of appreciated securities, the gift going into the donor advised fund isn't taxed. The donor is not subject to capital gains tax that they would have to pay if and when they liquidated that asset.
And that makes a lot of sense. A lot of people, I think, they have maybe an investment, a stock, let's say, that's really grown, and they're afraid to cash it out because of the taxes on the appreciated assets. And then every week or month, they're giving donations to their favorite charities through their checkbook. And this just seems like such an obvious way to maybe get some great benefits without the negative when you use a donor advised fund.
Yeah, absolutely. And there are situations where a donor will have a high income year. Maybe they get a bonus at work. Maybe they're selling a business. Maybe they have rental real estate and they're tired of being landlords. Any of these assets you can take and put into a donor advised fund and basically preload your charitable giving for a number of years. A lot of folks looking at retiring, and they recognize that once they retire, their income is going to go down. Mm-hmm. Let's pre-fund our charitable giving for retirement now while my income taxes are high.
Oh, that's a great idea. I think we've explained donor advised funds pretty well. I think we've explained the benefits, not right for everybody, but in certain situations, this can be a great option. Is there anything else you'd like to add, Jim?
One other benefit of a donor advised fund is you can establish one while you're living. You can add to it after you're in heaven, and you can designate who the recommenders might be. We have some donors who have made gifts into a donor advised fund, and then they gather their family together, their children and their grandchildren, who come to a family meeting to talk about what ministries do we want to support this year from our donor advised fund. It's a great way to teach your legacy, your charitable intent to your children and grandchildren.
I think Jim has really described donor advised funds pretty adequately and clearly for people. So if this is something that's going to apply for you, great. It can really be a wonderful option. It's not right for everybody, but it can be a good option. But we always recommend talk to your own financial planner, your estate planning attorney, to make sure you're making decisions that are really right for you. We're sharing information here, but the final decision is something that you have to make. So we're very happy to be able to bring this to you. As I end every episode, it's your life, it's your plan, and it's your legacy. And a donor advised fund is just one more way that you can leave a great Christian ministry-based legacy. When you're in heaven and your loved ones are remembering you, what a great way to have that extra little legacy there for them to be able to say, you know, Mom and Dad started this, we get to continue it, and we get to remember those same ministries and support it in very positive ways. And a donor advised fund is one of those ways you can do that. If you have further questions, contact me, get a hold of the Wells Foundation. We'd love to be able to serve you. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next month.